Finally, finally, the Moto H20 is here. There seems to be a snag at Motorola India's end to actually put up the Moto H20 on sale and deliver it to customers. The global pandemic affecting shipment and logistics seems to be having a cascading effect now on phone sales in India. In fact, if you want to buy a tech gadget very badly in 2021, you might just find it really tough to do so. Anyway, coming back to the Moto H20, if you are planning on buying this phone, I'm pretty certain that you have the question in your minds whether the Moto H20 is better than the Samsung Galaxy A52s and the OnePlus Nord 2. Well, my name is Ershad, you're watching MySmartPrice, and let's take a deep dive look at the Motorola H20 and compare it against, the Samsung Galaxy A52s and the OnePlus Nord 2. But before we move on, these videos take a hell of a lot of effort. So we take all your support and we're trying to hit 100k really soon. So I would suggest that you hit that red subscribe button and the bell icon right next to it to get notified whenever MySmartPrice puts out an awesome new tech video. Now, I really like the Motorola H20's design regardless of the certain apparent flaws, which I will come to in a bit. The flat edge design that made a comeback with the iPhone 12 series seems to be now trickling down to certain Android phones as well, and the Motorola H20 is definitely one of them. Also, the H20, despite being a big phone, is slim and light, far more so than the Nord 2 or the Galaxy A52s. That's mainly because it is an all-plastic construction with the smallest battery of the three. In comparison, the Nord 2 does feel more premium thanks to its glass back. As for the Galaxy A52s, Samsung uses plastic too, but I find the H20's frosted emerald color and matte frame more appealing. But the plastic rims coated in a shiny fake metal finish looks kinda cheap. Same is true for the Nord 2's frame. Now, since the H20 has the largest display of the three and the flattest one too, the phone does feel very wide. While I got used to it, it goes without saying that of the three phones, the Nord 2's curved rear feels more comfortable to hold and use. The ergonomics are just better. As for the A52s, it feels more dense and heavy compared to the other two. Alright, so if you guys have come this far and if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like button and maybe even comment below for the sake of the algorithm so that YouTube Baba can send this to more people looking for a review of the Motorola H20 and also recommend good content to most folks. Talking about the issues with the Moto H20's design, the power button with the integrated fingerprint reader is placed slightly higher on the right edge than I'd have ideally preferred it to be. But what's worse is the volume rocker is placed even above it. Motorola should have definitely done better out here. Anyway, the physical fingerprint scanner on the H20 is the fastest at unlocking the phone. The Nord 2's in-display fingerprint reader is pretty fast too, but the A52s's scanner is the slowest of the three. Now, to add to H20's woes, the Google Assistant button on the left frame is very high too. I felt discouraged from using it because of this placement. And you know what, that's not even the least of Motorola's problems. The biggest one is the 3-step camera module that extends way too much out of the rear. To watch the phone wobble on a flat surface reminds me of an extremely imbalanced Teletubbies running down a hill. Now, there's also no 3.5mm headphone port either on the H20 or the OnePlus Nord 2, which is present on the Galaxy A52s, by the way. Good job, Samsung. Now, the H20 doesn't have a stereo speaker setup, which is present on both the OnePlus Nord 2 and the Galaxy A52s. Another major advantage that the Galaxy A52s offers is the IP67 rating, which is literally unheard of in this price range. Plus, this is the only phone that offers expandable storage, which is not available on the other two. As for the Nord 2, you get the trademark alert slider, which long-time OnePlus users will attest is super useful. Now, you must be wondering, why do I still like the design of the Motorola H20? Well, because I like an aesthetic that tends to stand out from the mundane. You know what, this is precisely the reason why I picked up the Motorola Razr XT912 back in the day over the iPhone 4S, because it stood out. The H20 stands out. Having said that, if you like a functional design in a smartphone, then I would suggest picking up the Galaxy A52s instead, because for the more money that you pay for it, you do get IP67 rating, you also get a headphone jack and expandable storage. The H20 has the largest 6.7-inch AMOLED display with a fast 144Hz refresh rate, 576Hz touch sampling rate, support for HDR10+, and a 10-bit color panel. The on-paper specs are of course super duper impressive. In comparison, the Nord 2 pales with only 90 Hz refresh rate, and the A52s does offer 120 Hz, which is pretty good. One thing you need to note about the H20 is that it is set to auto refresh by default, and you should know that auto refresh can only go up to 120 Hz. So you will have to manually switch to 144 Hz in case you want a faster refresh rate. Which, by the way, is not too much of an advantage over the 120Hz refresh rate panel of the Samsung Galaxy A52s, at least in terms of speed. I couldn't really tell the difference with my naked eye. Having said that, the Motorola H20 does feel, light and snappy and fast to use. Now, what does make a huge difference, however, is the 576Hz touch sampling rate. It was very apparent while playing games. In Call of Duty Mobile, my Twitch responses were better on the H20 as opposed to the other two phones. And thanks to the 10-bit panel on the H20, which can display 1 billion colors as opposed to 16 million on the other two phones, you will see that content just looks far richer with gorgeous gradients too. Unfortunately, the HDR tuning looks kinda odd in YouTube content sometimes, as the reds tend to overshoot. Otherwise, it is fantastic. The Motorola H20 definitely has an edge over the other two phones. However, HDR playback on Netflix is not possible on all the three phones, which is a huge letdown. As for the color tuning, the sRGB tuning in natural mode on the A52s is great, but Moto H20 is even more accurate. OnePlus doesn't offer a natural tuning in the gentle mode at all. Remember one thing, all three phones don't get as bright as flagship phones, but for mid-range phones they're pretty damn good. In our peak brightness test, running an HDR test video within a 10% window, the H20 had the least peak brightness of around 650 nits. The A52s and the Nord 2 could touch about 750 nits, but in regular usage with the brightness slider set to maximum, the H20 has the highest brightness levels, followed by the Nord 2 and the A52s. Now, one of the downsides to the display of the H20 is the fact that you get only Corning's older gen Gorilla Glass 3 support. The Nord 2 and the A52s offer Gorilla Glass 5, which in my personal experience has better scratch protection than even Gorilla Glass 6. Finally, the haptic feedback performance of the Moto H20, despite the slender profile, is really good. But the Nord 2 is just in a different league altogether and offers the best haptic feedback for sure. Unfortunately, the A52s comes with the vibration motor off by default, and that's when you can guess that it's probably going to be bad. And unfortunately, it is. It is actually a rattly vibration motor that vibrates the entire body and doesn't feel precise at all. Unequivocally, the H20 has the best display among all the three phones, followed by the Samsung Galaxy A52s and the OnePlus Nord 2, which continues to be my least favorite. Now, the on-paper camera specs of the H20 looks fantastic. You get a 108 megapixel main camera, a 16 megapixel ultra-wide shooter, and an 8 megapixel telephoto with 3x optical zoom capabilities. This is a proper triple camera setup with no corners being cut anywhere. Plus, on the front, you get a 32 megapixel selfie camera. Let's quickly find out how the camera setup fares against the A52s and the Nord 2. Starting with the color reproduction, the H20 has the closest to natural reproduction. The Galaxy A52s has a slightly warm output. The Nord 2 has a desaturated look that looks like a raw capture instead of a processed JPEG for some reason. So the H20 is greater than the Galaxy A52s is greater than Nord 2 when it comes to color reproduction. But note that the Galaxy A52s has a slight problem with identifying the correct white point in certain scenarios, leading to images like these, which are entirely cool, which is not so much of a problem either on the Nord 2 or the H20. Anyway, in these samples, we're checking for sensor sharpness. Here, the H20 tends to be nice and sharp without any over sharpening. If you can get it to focus right, you're bound to get some crisp details. But I did notice one thing: due to the lack of optical image stabilization and the lightweight of the phone, the camera introduces shakes easily, and I had to hold the phone with a tight grip using both my hands to get a tack sharp focus. Anyway, OnePlus and Samsung's algorithms tend to oversharpen slightly to make details stand out, but you can tell it doesn't look very natural. Moving on to HDR processing, all the three phones are fairly good at it, but I noticed that the Nord 2 has a distinctly tone mapped look and tends to boost the oranges in the evening sky. And like I mentioned in my review of the Nord 2, when it comes to image stacking, there seems to be some problem with the algorithm on the phone. Now, the H20's HDR processing is very close to how my eyes perceived it in real life, but I'm aware that it doesn't look very attractive. However, technically, this is the right way to do it. Samsung has a nice middle ground overall. In the second sample, the orange overtones in the Nord 2's sample are very apparent, although it does look very, very attractive as a result. Plus, the algorithm has done a bang-up job of lifting more details from the shadows in the subject on the front. In our ultra-wide test, the H20 has the best, most natural looking details, a fairly accurate color palette and a very good color science consistency with the primary camera. The only problem is that it cannot go very wide and it tends to underexpose the shadow region in complex lighting conditions. The Galaxy A52s's ultra-wide has the widest lens of the three at 123-degree field of view. And thanks to the slightly oversaturated color processing, it is the immediately shareable one straight out of the camera. The Nord 2's ultra-wide angle camera, on the other hand, is absolutely horrendous. It tends to oversharpen excessively and create a very doctored look that feels like it has been shot using a cheap camera. With the H20, you can also use the ultra-wide angle camera to shoot macro shots, plus it can go closer to a subject compared to the A52s's dedicated 5-megapixel macro shooter. And of course, it is sharper and offers more accurate colors too. The Nord 2 doesn't have the option to shoot macros, so yeah, if you like shooting macros, the H20 is the best option for you. Now, the H20 also has a huge advantage with its support for a telephoto camera. Not that it is very sharp or anything, but it is definitely better than the 3x digital zooms on the other two phones. Anyway, between the A52s and the Nord 2, you can trust the OnePlus algorithm to do a better job of digital zoom. Now, when it comes to human subject pictures using the rear camera, the Nord 2 and the Galaxy A52s do a good job of reproducing details on the face. Plus, you can notice that the highlight peaks are well controlled, which on the H20, you'll actually find patches of overexposed portions all around my face. Having said that, the facial tone is close to accurate on the H20. However, I really like the picture captured by the Nord 2 here because the overall color tone is very good, including the color of the shirt. The A52s's only problem is a slightly off color reproduction. Otherwise, it's a good looking photo. However, the situation is exactly opposite when it comes to the portrait mode. Remember how I said when it comes to multi-frame stacking and processing, the OnePlus algorithm really sucks, with the Dimensity 1200 system on chip? Well, that problem hasn't been solved yet. The portrait mode shots on the Nord 2 continue to look really bad. The H20 on the other hand does a fabulous job of the edge cutout here. Now the Samsung algorithm is very good too, and that's expected considering Samsung does a decent job with portraits generally. But I must highlight that I'm clearly seeing an improved camera performance on the A52s over the A52. Now I used to really like the Nord 2 selfie camera performance, and the Moto H20 one-ups that quite comfortably. You get sharper textures, more accurate facial tones, and just a really very good looking selfie. The Nord 2 comes very close and has an advantage in the form of a wider field of view that is possible on its selfie camera. Against the light, the H20 does not do a good job of correcting the overexposed highlights in the background, but the face is nicely exposed plus sharp and fairly color accurate too. The Nord 2 and the A52s have a hazy sort of look. Now moving on to low light samples, I've never had it this easy evaluating low light samples. The first sample is shot in nearly pitch black conditions and using night mode on all the three phones. The Nord 2 just humiliates the H20 and the Galaxy A52s into submission. That is how fantastic the low light performance is on this OnePlus phone. The H20's low light performance is a shame out here. The Galaxy A52s at least makes some effort. In the second sample without night mode on, you can tell the 50 megapixel sensor on the Nord 2 lets in way more light. And with night mode on, it has the cleanest image despite being slightly oversaturated. The H20's image is very noisy. I'm really surprised at such bad camera performance from the Motorola H20 when it comes to low light. Now all the three phones can shoot up to 4K 30fps video recording, but the A52s doesn't offer electronic image stabilization beyond 1080p 30fps. And the sound recording is great on the Nord 2 and the A52s over the H20. However, the overall footage quality is the best on the Nord 2. So this is a 4K 30fps video recording using the rear camera on the Samsung Galaxy A52s and the Moto H20. Do let me know in the comments, show you guys what the image looks like. And of course, into the sky, into the light. The H20 does a lot of focus hunting and the A52s doesn't offer stabilization like I mentioned. And as for the front camera video performance, the standings change. The Galaxy A52s is the best of the lot. It offers 4K 30fps and 1080p 60fps recording options. The Nord 2 can only do 1080p 30fps, whereas the H20 can do 4K 30fps but not 1080p 60. Regardless, you also don't get EIS on the Nord 2's footage. You do get EIS at 1080p 30fps on the Galaxy A52s and the H20 though. Anyway, the sound recording and the footage quality is the cleanest on the A52s, so it wins this round. Hey guys, now I'm shooting a 1080p 30fps video using the front camera on both the Moto H20 and the Samsung Galaxy A52s. Do let me know what you thought about the video recording quality. Front camera on the OnePlus Nord 2 seems wider. Do let me know what you think of the image quality. Now all the three cameras also offer a few extra modes, but Samsung takes the cake with way more extra modes like a fun mode that uses Snapchat filters, single take, super slow motion and a few more. The H20 also offers dual video, which is also available on the Nord 2. Plus, you also get a spot color feature, which is available as AI portrait color on the Nord 2. However, I feel that the H20 is the most versatile camera because it offers a lot of cameras plus features too. The camera performance on the Motorola H20 can be defined as one where the brand throws everything at the wall and some things stick. The low light performance definitely needs a lot of work and probably requires a software update too. Now, the Galaxy A52s on the other hand offers a fairly balanced sort of camera performance, but it is the OnePlus Nord 2 that continues to be my pick or my favorite camera smartphone in this price range, primarily because it gets the primary camera performance and the selfie camera performance just right. Now, it might not offer a lot of great extras and good performance with the ultra wide angle camera, but I still think that this is my favorite. But that's just me. You guys could prefer versatility, and that's where the Motorola H20 has an edge. One of the reasons why the H20 is an awesome phone is because it has a near stock Android experience with fantastic Motorola features. From chop chop to open the camera to customizing options with Moto styles, I find it super enjoyable to use. Plus, you don't get any bloatware either. More importantly, Motorola's Ready For feature, which is similar to Samsung's DeX, is a good differentiator too. The Nord 2 on the other hand is the first phone from OnePlus to actually integrate ColorOS codebase, and it is a bit of a mess at the moment. There are UI inconsistencies and random feature pop-ins that happen unwittingly. Basically, it doesn't feel as clean as previous OxygenOS implementations. As for the One UI experience on the Galaxy A52s, Samsung just fills so much bloatware that it gets super annoying. From the annoying glance lock screen notification to pre-installed apps like MX Takatak, Samsung doesn't hold back on filling your phone with unwanted apps and UI features. Otherwise, One UI is more feature-rich compared to both OxygenOS and H20 software experience. All in all, if you haven't guessed already, I'd pick Motorola software experience over the OnePlus Nord's OxygenOS or Samsung Galaxy A52's One UI. But this is only in context of these phones and these phones alone, because One UI on a more premium phone like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra is fantastic. So keep that in mind. The H20 has the new Snapdragon 778 super mid-range chip inside it, which is the same system on chip inside the Galaxy A52s as well. Evidently, the Dimensity 1200 inside the Nord 2 is a far more powerful chip. And if you are a relentless gamer, then I'd suggest that you pick up the Nord 2, because whether it is Antutu or Geekbench or 3D Mark, the Nord 2 has the best scores among these phones. And you also get support for faster UFS 3.1 internal storage, which is UFS 2.2 on the H20. The AndroBench numbers clearly showcase the difference between the read-write speeds. Also, Motorola seems to be throttling the CPU performance of the Snapdragon 778G processor a lot, which is evident from our CPU throttle test. We've tested the Snapdragon 778G, a link to the video should pop up right now, and it's a fairly stable SoC, which is also evident from the Galaxy A52s's, CPU throttle score. But on the Motorola, there seems to be heavy throttling happening, and I presume this is to offer a slightly extended battery life, which I'll come to in a bit. However, when I stress tested the GPU with our standard 3D Mark Wildlife stress test, the Snapdragon 778G phones were better behaved in terms of stability as opposed to Dimensity 1200 system on chip inside the Nord 2. Now, if it's raw performance or gaming that you're craving for, then I would suggest picking up the OnePlus Nord 2 or something like the iQOO 7, which continues to be my favorite gaming phone, in this price category. The lack of a stereo speaker setup is definitely a sore point on the H20, and it is evident from the very average sound quality from the unidirectional sound that you get from it. Nord 2 and Galaxy A52s are definitely better. Listen for yourself. Now, if you want to future-proof yourself with more 5G band support, then all the three phones offer a lot of 5G bands, but it doesn't really matter right now in the context of India. What matters is the 4G performance, and all the three phones are fantastic with mobile data and of course calling as well. I had no qualms in either one of these phones, except for the fact that the Galaxy A52s does offer slightly better call quality over the earpiece compared to the other two phones, especially the Motorola H20. So if you like making a lot of calls and if you want a very crystal clear call quality, then I would suggest going for the Galaxy A52s. I must admit, I went into the review of the Motorola H20 expecting the battery life to be kinda average, considering that it has a very tiny 4000 mAh unit inside the phone. But to my surprise, I actually got about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time with 144Hz refresh rate always on. And this is where I'd like to allude to my earlier statement that this could be because of the CPU throttling of the Snapdragon 778G system on chip. Anyway, the icing on the cake is that you can expect up to 7 hours with auto refresh on. That's almost as good as the battery tuning of the Samsung Galaxy A52s, which has a larger 4500 mAh unit. Plus, the H20 charges faster in under an hour and 15 minutes with 30-watt hypercharge tech. As for the Nord 2, it doesn't last as long as the other two phones, but you can eke out about 5 to 6 hours of screen on time if you're careful with your usage. But the Nord 2's advantage is the super fast 65-watt charging speeds, and that can top up your battery from 0 to 100 in under 30 minutes, which is crazy. After using the H20, I can see where Motorola was going with this. It is trying to target the outliers, folks who actually prefer design, display and software over other parameters on a smartphone. In fact, when I handed this phone to my friend, over the weekend, he was immediately taken aback by how light it felt. And that is the kind of impression that this phone creates, which is apparent, and of course it also offers a fairly balanced performance as well. The only major issue that I have with the Motorola H20 is the camera performance in low light, so keep that in mind. And that's where the OnePlus Nord 2 comes in. It offers great low light performance thanks to the flagship 50 megapixel sensor inside it. Plus the overall performance is way better than the other two phones because you get a flagship grade Dimensity 1200 system on chip. If it's gaming that you crave for, that is also fantastic on the OnePlus Nord 2. Yes, I'm aware of those certain units of OnePlus Nord 2 exploding, which has been doing the rounds in the news. In fact, we even reported it, but none of them have been proved yet. So you should definitely consider the OnePlus Nord 2 as a legitimate alternative. In fact, this would be my top recommendation for one of the best phones under Rs 35,000. Now, I really like the Samsung Galaxy A52s as well. Yes, it is slightly more expensive, but for that more money, you get IP67 rating, you get a headphone jack, you get expandable storage, sustained CPU performance, and a good camera experience as well. If only Samsung wasn't too heavy-handed with the bloatware and the extra apps on One UI experience on the Samsung Galaxy A52s, that would have made it easier for me to recommend this phone. Also, one of the things that you guys need to remember is that the Samsung Galaxy M52s is just around the corner, and there is a possibility that a Snapdragon 778G toting phone from Samsung's stables could be priced under Rs 30,000. So you might want to wait for it before you make a final decision. I know a lot of you guys must be thinking, Esha, just tell me one phone, recommend one phone. And I really cannot do that. It's very difficult. I would suggest that you map out what are the most important parameters to you, because there is no one best phone in any price category anymore out there. If anybody tells you that, no, this is the only phone that you need to buy, don't trust them, because it's not going to be the same experience for everybody. What works for me might not work for you. So be very careful. These are three completely distinctively different options, and each one of them could work for different kinds of people. For example, if I were to buy a phone in this price range, I would probably go for the Motorola H20, but I would recommend the OnePlus Nord 2 to more people. So I hope that sort of explains the entire, confusing scenario out here. This was my full review of the Motorola H20, and I hope you guys liked it. If you guys have any more comments, thoughts, or suggestions, do let me know in the comment section below. Until next time, this is Ershad from MySmartPrice signing off. Goodbye, and Godspeed, my friends.